Well, listeners, what's on my mind this morning is something that happened in my country, in Belize, last week. The people of Belize voted yes in a referendum to take a centuries old territorial dispute with Guatemala to the International Court of Justice, ICJ. And this has implications for both that country and for the region. So 55% of the people voted yes and 45% voted no. So there was quite a split on it. And the issue is a very emotional one for most Belizeans. This centuries old territorial claim is something that we've all been born and raised knowing about. Me born and come see it. My parents did, my grandparents
I go
did.
Belize, go hear about it.
We hear about it all the time. So Guatemala has at times claimed the whole country. Sometimes it's half of the country. Sometimes it's some of the keys and the territorial waters. On their maps in elementary schools, Belize doesn't even exist. Yeah. Just a few weeks ago, Guatemala's President Jimmy Morales was in schools playing geography teacher, drawing a map of his country that includes my country, telling school children to get used to drawing the map that way. And I'll play the audio for you, but it's in Spanish, so most of you wouldn't understand. This unfounded claim by Guatemala delayed Belize's independence for 20 years. So the country needed military protection when things got especially bad and the Guats lined up at the border threatening to invade. So Belize only got independence in 1981, when most of the rest of the English Caribbean got it in the 60s, largely because of this claim by Guatemala. Now, it might be difficult for Jamaicans to understand what it's like to share a border because Jamaica's an island and you don't have that problem where people from another country can just walk over and pillage your resources and overwhelm your schools and your hospitals. America knows, Trump knows all about it. Much less you don't share a border with a hostile neighbor where people from that country are very poor. Imagine what it would be like if Jamaica wasn't an island and Jamaica shared terrestrial borders with Cuba and Haiti, two of the poorest countries in the region that people keep trying to leave. A lot of them would be here in Jamaica. So on top of that, imagine if one of those countries also claimed your entire country or a part of it. Imagine you're vacationing in Negril Patria and the Cuban military tells you that you can't be there because Negril is theirs. That's what we've been going through for decades. And it flares up every few months, especially around election time in Guatemala. The politicians love to tell their people, vote for me and I'll take back Belize. So with that context, you'd think that we want a final resolution, right? And taking the issue to the ICJ for settlement seems like it might be the way to go. So you might be wondering why 45% of the people voted no. Well, it's because it's not that simple. And if I was there, I would have voted no too. Let me explain. So the referendum decision paves the way for Belize and Guatemala to go to the ICJ. Guatemala voted likewise in a similar referendum several months ago. So now we have to present an exceptionally strong case to win at the ICJ. And our government believes that we do have an exceptionally strong case. We've been an independent and sovereign nation for 38 years, borders recognized internationally, among very many other legal things. But the thing is, what will constitute a win at the ICJ? So for Guatemala, getting anything at all is a win. They're going into this with nothing to lose, land-wise. But for Belize, losing anything at all is a loss. Now, I was raised under the mantra, not a blade of grass. They shouldn't get.
Really?
So while I highly doubt that the ICJ is going to give away half of my country to Guatemala, it's not beyond comprehension that they could give something to appease the other side. I don't believe Guatemala should get anything. No part of my country. This has been an independent, sovereign country for 38 years. Now imagine you wake up tomorrow and all of a sudden Patria Key, Lime Key is not yours anymore to enjoy. Now Lime Key may be small, but it's part of Jamaica, it's yours. And you wouldn't want to give it up. And that's how I feel about my country and how many people there feel too, not a blade of grass. But the people have spoken and the majority has decided that they want this issue resolved by the ICJ, and that's how democracy works. It was a contentious campaign, as you would imagine, with emotions high on both sides. There was even an injunction obtained by the opposition barring the referendum, which should have been held on April 10.
Wow.
And it's instructive that the attorney who represented the government side in fighting the injunction, Lisa Schumann, is actually a politician from the opposition. So she went against her own party to defend the government against her party, which should indicate how deep this issue is, how for many people it's much bigger than party politics. But here we are. The referendum was held and the legal preparations to go to the ICJ now begin. So last Wednesday's decision by the people of Belize is a historic one, not just for that country, but for the entire Caribbean. Former Prime Minister of the Bahamas, Hubert Ingraham, who headed the Commonwealth Observers team for the referendum, made the point, and this is what he said.
Let me also say this, and I speak only for myself. I don't speak for this group on this point I'm going to make now. All the referenda in the Caribbean, the ones in my country and elsewhere, for the last 40, 50 years have been defeated by the population, and generally speaking, not as high a voter turnout as it was experienced by Belize. And for that and much more, I commend you also.
So what does this say about the prospects of a national referendum for Jamaica? There's been talks about having a referendum on the CCJ, on the Buggery issue, and other issues as well. As Hubert Ingraham pointed out, you look at the history of referenda in the region, going back to Jamaica's withdrawal from the West Indies Federation. In more recent times, you had the referendum in Antigua and Grenada in 2018, both countries voting no to the CCJ. And it was the second referendum on that issue in Grenada. The people also voted no in 2016 in a referendum that also included other issues. Equality between men and women, protection for children born out of wedlock, like the repeal of the Bastard Act. They rejected a proposal for term limits for the Prime Minister, a proposal to ensure there's always an opposition leader in Parliament, even when they don't win a seat, which has happened. In 2016, the people of the Bahamas voted no to a raft of constitutional reforms, including equality between men and women, because the Bahamas has this strange law where if your father is Bahamian, you automatically get Bahamian citizenship, but not if your mother is Bahamian. Well, people voted against rectifying that. So the case has been made that referenda often reflect the sentiment of people towards the ruling administration. And if a government is unpopular, then the referendum is seen as a way of expressing that disgruntlement and can be seen as foreshadowing the next general election result, except that in 2018, the Grenada referendum, Prime Minister Keith Mitchell had just won a new term with an overwhelming majority with his party, actually sweeping all 15 seats in the House. So he had a strong mandate, immense popularity, and still lost the CCJ referendum. In Belize, too, the Barrow administration is in its third term, and it's been bruised and damaged by various scandals, as you might expect from a three-term administration. Yet the position advocated for by the government side was the one that won. Some are now saying Barrow could call early elections, as they see it as a sign of victory for him and his party. But like I pointed out with attorney Lisa Schumann, this particular issue goes a lot deeper than party politics for many, and I dare say most Belizeans. So I don't know if that interpretation is valid. So there's a lot of takeaways from this particular referendum in Belize, lots of regional implications and what it means for referenda across the region. And also, Belize will need CARICOM's continued support when the case finally comes up at the CCJ. That's going to take a few years before that happens. That's what's on my mind.